creating the art of the film, D.W. Griffith led the way. It was hardly an art when he joined it.
But when this great art form was created, it flowered in one generation, in just one generation. From the Great Train Robbery, which lasted 10 minutes, to Griffith's Intolerance, which is 3 hours. And everything that else has been added, sound, sound, color, and things like that, are all embellishments.
In 1915, the genius of D.W. Griffith towered above all other filmmakers. He rebuilt Babylon for his epic Intolerance. Like those ancient kings, his power and prestige seemed indestructible. But the kings of Babylon built in stone that would last 1,000 years. Griffith built his palaces of canvas and plaster. His monuments were an inspiration for the next generation. But the man himself would be discarded by the very industry he'd helped to build.
At the grave of D.W. Griffith in Crestwood, Kentucky, Mary Pickford leads beloved stars of the silent screen in homage to their greatest director. With Miss Pickford are Screen Directors Guild President Albert Rogel, Mrs. Griffith, Lillian Gish, star of Griffith's monumental film Birth of a Nation, and Richard Barthelmess. On behalf of the motion picture industry, so many of whose innovations Griffith pioneered, the stars he made great paid tribute to a great director.
Of Hollywood stars, just 3 were there. Each had been made a star by Griffith. Each had their private memories. Mary Pickford. Richard Barthelmess. Lillian Gish.
He was the father of film. He didn't do everything the first time like a close-up, but he developed, he gave us the grammar of filmmaking, the cutting, the handling of humanity before a camera, and understood the psychic strength of a lens.
Griffith's mastery of filmmaking led him from bit player to leader of the industry within a mere 5 years.
As a director, he was wonderful. He could come over and he'd touch your hair and whisper encouragement, or he could take command of the battlefield. He had a wonderful baritone voice, and he could use it as a clarion call to action.
The Birth of a Nation was Griffith's most famous film. It sprang from the stories he'd heard from his father, who'd fought for the South in the Civil War. His father died when Griffith was only 10, but his influence would last all his son's life. Griffith built this monument in the local cemetery in Kentucky in 1934, enshrining his father's exploits in stone. He's said to have led a charge in a horse and buggy when wounded. Roaring Jake Griffith had been a brave soldier, but many of his tales were pure invention.
David idolized his father, and I think that he would have believed anything that his father told him to be the absolute truth.
Griffith himself was a man of contradictions. He lived in a blaze of publicity, yet he remains an enigma. He loved myth as much as his father. In 1920, his official biography declared that his home was a colonial plantation. His family descended from the kings of Wales. Griffith lived up to the myth. He cast himself as a Southern aristocrat. Even fellow Southerners believed him. David Walk Griffith was born in Kentucky in 1875 to an impoverished soldier whose wife owned a small farm. The farm is still there. It still worked in traditional ways, although the house has been rebuilt. Griffith once drew a picture of his birthplace. It was this modest frame farmhouse, rather than a colonial plantation. When the family's farm fell on hard times, Griffith blamed the Civil War. He should have blamed his father.
I think that you would probably call him a scoundrel. It's the way he was characterized by many of his people who knew him in those days. I've heard my aunts talk at various times about he and some of his cronies sitting in the shade sipping their bourbon when his wife and daughters were out hoeing corn in the fields, and he was sitting in the shade drinking. And by the end of the day, they'd all be on the ground.
Griffith's mother, Mary Oglesby, came from an old Kentucky family. She was a strict, hard-working woman, deeply religious, mother of 7 children. As a child, Griffith longed for a magic box to capture the beauty he saw around him.
You could see in the terrain that he selected for a lot of his films was similar to that where he was raised, was low rolling hills. He was a true Kentuckian from head to toe.
Griffith put his boyhood into his films too. He had a particular dislike for ploughing. He had a poor education. He attended school for only 2 or 3 years, but he was consumed with the desire to learn. He would read anything he could lay his hands on, and virtually educated himself with the help of his oldest sister, Mattie, a schoolteacher. As Griffith's family fell further into debt, so he lost any chance of a proper education. When he was 14, the family moved to Louisville, Kentucky. He found the city bewildering.
The boys made fun of him. He looked so countrified, like a country jig, with his clothes and hair. Griffith, in those days, was tall and angular, and he wore what was referred to as high-water pants. They were up to about his ankles.
He took refuge in the city library, where he indulged the love of books his father had inspired in him. He got a job in a bookstore, which was a gathering place for the intelligentsia of Louisville. It was his university. When he was 17, he discovered the theatre, and he decided to become a playwright. Told that all great playwrights learned their craft on the stage, he became an actor. After small roles with touring companies, Griffith joined the Mefford Stock Company back in Louisville, which meant steady employment for 2 years. But he was ambitious. In 1899, he decided to leave Louisville for good.
And for 10 years, he barnstormed across the country, learning his craft, first as an actor and then as a playwright. He acted in every conceivable kind of drama. His most famous engagement came when, in 1905, Nance O'Neill engaged him as a leading man, and he played in Ibsen with her, in Maeterlinck, in plays by Suderman. In other companies, he played in Shakespeare.
Actors were looked down upon. Anxious not to upset his family, he'd changed his name to Lawrence Griffith.
Whole family still are deep down Methodist people. The mother wanted him to be a preacher. She did not approve of him being in the acting profession.
He saw his first moving picture, and while he was not impressed by the film, he was impressed by the number of people watching it. In San Francisco, Griffith met the actress Linda Arvidsson and married her in 1906. In New York, they lived from hand to mouth, writing plays together. One of them was actually performed in 1907, A Fool and a Girl. When the play failed, a friend recommended moving pictures. Nickelodeons were springing up in the big cities. For 5 cents, you saw a half-hour show, but they had an even worse reputation than the stage.
In those days, the movie was regarded like something like a burlesque, and we youngsters were embarrassed about going in to see it. But after walking around the block 2 or 3 times to get courage enough to go in, we went in and felt that we had done a great job by seeing a movie for the first time.
This Edison production of 1903, directed by Edwin S. Porter, was still about the best film you could see in 1908. The industry had not moved very far. Griffith tried to sell a scenario to the Edison Company, but they hired him just as an actor. Here he is in one of his first appearances in Rescued from an Eagle's Nest in 1908. He is 32 years old. His visit to the Biograph Company changed his life. Their old mansion on 14th Street would become his home for 5 years. He even acted on the steps outside. Griffith is the policeman in this Biograph comedy. In the theatrical tradition then current, films were shot on a stage in what had been the ballroom. Griffith sold them some stories, but he was used mainly as an actor. He played small parts like this Roman, still as Lawrence Griffith. Here he plays a clown. This split set enabled 2 things to happen at once without the need for cutting. Biograph were not always so primitive. They gave Griffith a close-up, something he is supposed to have invented later on. After 6 months, they offered him a job as director. In spite of their modern equipment, Biograph were in a financial mess. Their main director had fallen ill, and cameraman Arthur Marvin recommended Griffith to replace him. Only when he was promised his acting job back if he didn't succeed did Griffith agree. Billy Bitzer, another cameraman, helped him plan his first film. Griffith used his wife, Linda, and took great trouble to find locations. Kidnapped by gypsies, a little girl is concealed in a barrel. Biograph were delighted. Griffith was given a contract and soon became their sole director. Griffith disliked tricks, and he wasn't strong on comedy. Although he made a few, like this one, he was glad to hand them over to one of his actors, Mack Sennett, on the left. Griffith preferred the conventional approach: long-held shots, full figure, the view from the stalls in a theatre. And often the entertainment provided a moral. One-reel melodramas like this were no different from any others in 1909. But soon Griffith was transformed by this new medium. His players were uncredited, but many became stars like Mary Pickford. Griffith was uncredited too, and yet his reputation grew in the industry, and so did that of his partner, Billy Bitzer. They took their camera further afield. They brought to their largely city-bound audience the beauties and traditions of America. Scenically, the Biograph Company were far ahead of their rivals. From 1910, Griffith spent the winters in California and often filmed in this attractive village. It was called Hollywood. But in spite of nostalgia for his rural past, Griffith was not blind to the reality beneath the beauty. He felt the camera could be an agent of social change. He cross-cut scenes to sharpen the story of a wheat speculator who enriched himself at the expense of the poor. The speculator is jubilant. At the moment of triumph, an accident. Griffith tinted this scene gold. With films like this, editing became an art. Griffith's output was uneven, for in the beginning he and Bitzer were turning out 2 and 3 films a week, like sausages, he complained.
We were making films on the proverbial shoestring. We never had enough money, we never had enough time. As it was, Griffith took valuable hours to rehearse.
Griffith's rehearsals were an essential discipline, for this was how his films took shape. He worked out his scenes in collaboration with his stock company. He had stories written, but he carried the shooting script in his head. He found he was able to improvise at great speed. When the Gish sisters visited the studio, they suddenly found themselves in rehearsal.
Well, we watched the other actors to see what they were doing and were smart enough to take our cues from them. And finally, at the climax, at the end, Griffith himself took a .22 revolver out of his pocket and started shooting at the ceiling and chasing us around. We thought we were in a madhouse.
As burglars robbed the safe next door, the girls called for help. Griffith's intercutting became the trademark of Biograph. The company had objected at first. He told them Dickens had done it, so would he. Audiences were startled by his moving camera. They'd probably never traveled so fast in their lives. The romance of speed inspired advertisers as it inspired Griffith. He would develop this situation still further for Intolerance. A favorite theme for his Races to the Rescue was a besieged group facing overwhelming odds. He would rework it for The Birth of a Nation. Inspired by Custer's Last Stand, The Massacre featured Blanche Sweet.
know, there are great things that happen in the world you're not impressed by right away. It takes a while to find out the value of them. And I didn't realize the value, any value, about motion pictures until about a year, 2 years, until I started to work for him in California. And then suddenly it came over me that this man I was working for was very good, and what he was doing was very good.
The public came more and more to biograph films. They influenced the entire industry. Griffith seemed to know just what subjects would sell.
He had been for so many years a bad actor in bad plays in bad towns that he knew the audience, the great unwashed, upon whom the motion picture of that day, known scornfully as Nickelodeon, was depending.
Griffith was constantly improving his craft. This scene is from 1911, and this from 1912.
And he said, never play down, always play up. Do the best you can and make it the most knowing, the most intelligent emotion, whatever it is. Don't look down upon your audience.
Refining the gestures of melodrama, Griffith realized how powerfully the camera could convey emotion. The less the actors did, the more they achieved. The girl, played by Lillian Gish, has just been told that her baby has died. She lacks even the support of her husband, who's been having an affair.